Picture this, you're starting to do well in life, you're doing well in work and at school, you're spending time with friends, and maybe you even get into a new relationship, so things are finally starting to move in the right direction. But then something starts to happen. You start procrastinating, you start picking fights with your new partner, and all of a sudden it feels like you're back at square one, and you're engaging in self-sabotage and you wonder to yourself, why did I just do that? If this example resonates with you, then I think this video is going to be really helpful because I'm going to talk about in this video the psychology behind self-sabotaging, as well as some strategies that I use with my patients to be able to develop insight into why they're engaging in this behavior, as well as some ways to get off the off-ramp to be able to break this pattern. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Parkilau. I'm a clinical psychologist licensed in the state of California, as well as the province of Ontario, and I love talking about everything evidence-based mental health, so hopefully you find some of these videos helpful for you too. So the first reason why some people engage in self-sabotage is because of the fear of success. Although success sounds like a great thing, it can also come with a lot of expectation to continue doing great work and being worried that at some point you're gonna not do as well or that other people are gonna judge you when you aren't continuing to perform to their expectation. So at some point, you begin to waddle and wade through this uncertainty as to when is the other shoe gonna drop, when am I gonna actually mess up, and then as a result, feel like I've lost all my progress. And in some ways, tolerating this uncertainty can be really, really hard. It's kind of like you're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop or the ticking time bomb to finally explode into your face, especially if you're somebody who's had maybe a traumatic past where things have gone really well and then life kind of kicked you in the butt, like something terrible happened, some sort of sickness or a breakup, and as a result, you kind of lost all the progress that you had. So it's almost like it's a bit easier to almost be the person to self-sabotage than wait for life to kick you in the butt. So on the opposite end then, reason number two is that even though it sounds a little bit weird, failure or non-success is actually safe and predictable because you're not necessarily making any progress, so you don't have to worry about your own expectations being dashed. Other people can't judge you or expect anything of you because you're not really engaging in those behaviors in the first place. You're not really playing the game, so to speak. So the function of self-sabotage in that way allows you to stay safe and protect you from uncertainties that could ruin the great success that you would have made otherwise, which would create a lot more pain in terms of like going from success to failure than to just stay in kind of where you are right now. Sounds a little weird, but that can actually be something that can be quite reinforcing. And to play with that idea a little bit more, reason number three for self-sabotage is that success comes with its own costs. So sometimes we think to ourselves, well, who wouldn't want to be more fit or make more money and be more successful? But in reality, all of these things that seem so kind of singularly beneficial can actually have hidden costs. I'll tell you about a story about one of my patients who I had been working with for a while, and they actually saw a lot of progress initially in treatment. They were, doing really well in school, spending lots of time with friends, they had reduced their substance use, but then suddenly sort of a pattern of self-sabotage started to peek back out. And we had a little bit of a conversation about that as to why they were starting to engage in the substance use again, why they were procrastinating again, and through that exploration, we actually came up with a few different reasons for why they started to engage in these behaviors. Number one thing they realized was that when they were feeling bad, when they were sick, their parents would often be very, very concerned for them, and they would give them the validation that their problems actually mattered. But when they were successful and doing well, the parents didn't talk to them at all. They didn't really care very much. And number two, one thing that was quite interesting was that when things were a little bit more chaotic in their lives, that actually led to more sort of interesting drama, which in some ways was actually quite reinforcing. Like, yeah, nothing bad happens, nothing good happens after 2 a.m., sorry. But at the very least, it's quite an interesting story that they can tell their friends after, but when things are stable, it's also sort of synonymous with boring. So in that way, for them, success meant kind of boredom, which was not particularly interesting. So those things were actually, interestingly, things that were hidden costs to what success meant, which was sort of validation and attention from family, as well as a life of stability, kind of also meant a life of boredom for them. Reason number four for self-sabotage can be low self-esteem. So oftentimes, or at least sometimes, people with low self-esteem will feel kind of almost guilty or ashamed of doing well because they feel like, I don't really feel like I deserve all these good things. Other people deserve it way better than I do, and that sort of feeling of guilt and shame makes them withdraw, makes them stop engaging in those behaviors, and then engage in self-sabotage. And then finally, reason number 5 is perfectionism. People who have an all or nothing thinking, I'm either doing it perfectly or I'm not doing it well enough, will find themselves kind of stuck in that sort of middle sometimes when they're starting to improve because they feel like they're never really doing as well as they hope to be doing. And then at some point, the perfectionism kicks in and says, well, if you can't do it well, what's the point? Or if you can't do it perfectly, what's the point? And then they stop engaging in the behaviors, even though, of course, like progress is not a linear journey, it's not all or nothing. You need to slowly kind of build your way up there with sometimes occasional setbacks and being able to, in some ways, absorb those setbacks and learn from them instead of giving them all together is a really powerful strategy to really getting to the place where you want to get to. But perfectionism, of course, can be a barrier to that because it feels like I'm failing the moment I don't feel like I'm doing as well as I'd hope to be. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the reasons for self-sabotage, let's now shift gears into talking about some of the strategies that we can use to break this pattern. And I think one thing that can be really helpful is to actually accept the costs and consequences of what it means to change. That for some people, maybe change means braving the uncertainty about potential failure. Maybe accepting change means that you're going to spend less time engaging some of the things you really enjoy, like playing games or engaging in certain hobbies and spending more of that time on certain tasks and projects and being able to say, you know what, like it really sucks that I don't get to do that as much anymore, but that's important to me because this other thing, this successful thing, this thing that I'm trying to change is going to be more important. But we can honor the losses while accepting the consequences so that you're able to in some ways move forward more fully and properly. So this leads to kind of strategy number 2, which is to find your why. Why are you engaging in this change in the first place? What is it about it that is truly important and of value to you? Because the person who doesn't have a why, there's no point really thinking about the how. We need to really understand how this change leads to kind of betterment in your own personal unique life, not just what society says, but you personally, what is meaningful about this change so that when things get hard, when you want to engage in a little bit of slide back, you're able to say and reflect on, wait, this is important to me for X, Y, and Z reasons. That's why I would like to continue on this journey. And now, just because you found your why doesn't mean that sometimes you're not going to notice that sort of urge to procrastinate or slide back a little bit. And in those moments, it can be quite helpful to utilize certain strategies to manage the stress in the moment. To be able to say, wait a minute, I'm noticing that urge to kind of procrastinate right now or to kind of blow something up. What can I do to be able to regulate my emotions? Maybe I can sit with the distress for a little bit, urge surf to kind of allow for those kind of desires to pass. It could be using some sort of regulation technique like breathing or splashing your face with some cold water, or like a distraction technique to be able to just do something so that you don't end up doing the bad thing or the unhelpful thing. Whatever it might be for you, is just something to kind of navigate those situations when those urges or impulses come up. And for the people who find success to be a little bit too je ne sais quoi, boring and stable and not super interesting or fun, one strategy that can be quite helpful can actually be something like controlled chaos, where you're literally intentionally planning out some things that is a little bit kooky, a little bit crazy, like for example, getting a tattoo or planning out a really wild night with your friends so that, you're controlling and containing the chaos so that you can still have that peace and part of you that you value without that kind of like expanding and blowing up the rest of your life. As well, specifically for the people who feel a sort of low sense of self-worth, where they have the question, do I deserve it? And the answer is always like, no. One strategy that can be helpful is to reframe and change the question, not from do I deserve it, but to would it be helpful? Would it be helpful if I were to engage in this behavior? Would it be helpful if I were to think this way? So that in that way, you're taking the judgments out of it. It's not about you or how you view yourself. It's just about, is the particular behavior going to be helpful towards a certain goal or to meet a certain value or to serve somebody else? Whatever that may be for you, just changing the question to get the judgment out of it. So hopefully this video was helpful to learn a little bit more about the psychology behind self-sabotage, as well as a few different ways to get on the off-ramp so that you're able to continue to reach your goals. Remember that not all change is going to be positive, but that doesn't mean you have to stay the same. It can just be saying, hey, like, it sucks, and honor the losses while continuing to move towards the goals and the values that you set out for yourself to build your own meaningful life. Anyway, thanks for watching as always. If you enjoyed what you watched today, I encourage you to subscribe because I'll be continuing to make videos just like this down the road, which I hope will be helpful for your own mental health journey. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.